right, everybody, we are back with our guest of the evening. Mr. Terry Wickham joins us here on Inside the Jackal's Head. And Terry Wickham, of course, like I said earlier on the show, is the president of Manta Ray Pictures, a company that represents all of his work. And I want him to really get into who he is before we go further into what he's working on right now, because he is a very interesting fella. And Terry, welcome to the show. I really appreciate having you on tonight and you being with us.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be on part of it.
Now, I've had you, of course, we've interviewed you on Out of Sight Radio, and that audience knows who you are, but my audience here, it might not be as aware as to who you are in Manta Ray Pictures. Give us a little bit of a backstory before we continue on about who you are and how you got started with Manta Ray Pictures.
Oh, sure. I'm a filmmaker, journalist. I've been making movies since 1986 in some capacity. Started out when I was in the Army. I started directing music videos when I was in West Germany. That progressed into when I went to Louisiana, which is my second duty station. And then I just kept trying to make films and short films and music videos over the course of that time. I eventually went to New York, where I continued that. I studied at the American Film Institute in New Orleans for directing with Dazu Magar, who's part of the American Film Institute. I studied screenwriting in Houston when I was in the Army in Louisiana with Carl Sutter, who wrote for Moonlighting. That was screenwriting. And I studied with Martha Coolidge with the American Film Institute in their AFI location in New York. And then I did some other studying when I got to New York at NYU. I studied, film, technology, producing, did some screenwriting classes, even with the Shawshank Redemption director, Frank Darabont.
Oh, cool.
That wasn't
by the way, some people might recognize that name from The Walking Dead.
Oh, of course, The Walking Dead and The Mist and, The Green Mile. So really nice fellow, great movie director. Mm-hmm. Learned a lot from him. And, really I consider myself mostly self-taught. I mean, I can't tell you how many books and DVDs and laser discs and, all the things I've studied over the years. And, of course, making your films is where you learn the most.
That's the number one passion in your life, huh? Making films?
Yeah, and what really sucks about it is I don't get to make films as often as I'd like. So in between that time, I'm also a journalist, which I've been doing since I was in high school. Back in high school, I had a magazine, well, I'd call it a fanzine, that I put out called Carnage, which at the time was short stories, film reviews, music reviews. I had artists that would draw photographs for not only the short stories, but the reviews. Guys like Tim Bruns and Andrew Capella and Jim Margrave were the artists I worked with back then. And then, over the course of, say, 30 years, I wrote for the Army. I actually reviewed movies and stuff when I was in the Army. Then I came out and I wrote for FearsMag.com. I was a senior writer for Guitar2001magazine.com, Shockwave magazine, Rumor magazine, and, of course, my own website for like the last 10 years, which I actually like the most. Even though, when you're in a magazine, it's kind of neat to see it in print. But the thing I always found was terrible about magazines were how long it took for the article that you would write, how long it would take to get out. And then to get paid, it would take like 4 or 5, 6 months. And, I don't always do this for money, for the main reason. But, I mean, you'd write like a review of a CD, and you wouldn't see a payment for like 6 months.
Wow, so I didn't even know that you got paid to do a review for a CD. I would like to do those for free. They give me the chance.
Oh, well, for my own site, that's obviously what I do. But for magazines and stuff, you always get paid. So, like if I wrote for Shockwave or something like that, it would just take forever. And then, one of the worst, I think really what kind of broke the straw's back, or so to speak, was I wrote this one big article on a band from Sweden called Evergrey, who I really like. And I wrote this really nice article when their album was coming out in 2006 called Monday Morning Apocalypse. And it took a couple of months for the article to come out. And then they didn't even put my name on the article. They put the wrong person's name.
Are you serious?
Yeah, so I'm like, it took forever to get paid, and then they didn't even put my name on it. So
maybe that's why it took forever to get paid. They screwed up the name. They didn't know who to pay.
Yeah, exactly. So after that point, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do my own site because I don't have to wait for things to go up. And I don't have to worry about it getting screwed up like that. I'll just do it myself.
Now I'm looking at your site here, and it shows you that you've done definitely a bunch of short films. What is it about short films that you really like doing that you've made so many of them?
Well, I think a lot of times with the short films, it's basically because you may not have the money to make a feature film, or you may
Right.
not have the time or the right people. So I think the things with short films is that they're so small, usually in comparison to a feature film, that it give you something that you can actually do and finish and get out and kind of work on your craft. So for me, that's been the reason why I've done a lot of short films.
Now you have done some feature, like your first one was Out of Touch in 1995, right? That was
Yeah, that
a
well,
full
that
feature.
but that was a big film. That was 140. Let me get this right. 184 page script,
Wow.
which it's usually a script a minute a page. So that's
Right.
almost unfilmable. I mean, that's insane. And so it ended up being a 132-minute movie when we finished editing it and took certain things out. But that took a year. That took a whole year to shoot that movie on weekends. We shot it in New Jersey, New York City, Staten Island, Long Island. Um, I cast my actors. I was going to acting school at the time at HB Studios in Manhattan, so I cast most of my actors from that school. Um, and it was a lot of fun, but I remember it was really hard. I mean, a year to keep people's interest a year, to people look different over a year, people's interest can wane over a year. That was a tough project.
Yeah, no kidding. That was your first major feature film. How was that experience? How do you compare that experience being your very very first time making a full feature film compared to like making one now, where you've already gone through the trials a couple times?
I think you learn a lot. You make a lot of mistakes, and you
Does it
don't.
get easier at any point? Has to,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it does, but yet it's always hard. I mean, it's really weird. But when you make a movie, there's so many things that affect the film. I mean, you're talking about the actors on what's going on in their lives. Obviously the money to make the movie, the equipment, the people that help you work on the film, whether it's makeup artists or still photographers or cinematographers, editors, production designers, all these people. It's just, you would think it gets easier. I mean, look, when John Carpenter made Halloween, it was the most successful independent film ever made. He shot it in 21 days at a $325,000 budget. We turn around and make The Fog after that, and the experience was so bad, he almost quit directing. So you
Oh, yeah,
go
that's
from
true. Yep.
a guy who you feel knows everything about making a movie, because if you look at Halloween, it's always perfect, and he made a movie after that which he felt didn't work, and he had to actually go back and reshoot just to make it work, and he almost quit directing after that. So, to answer your question, you think it gets easier, but it really doesn't. I mean, it's always hard.
I guess it's also based on the project. Like, the bigger the project, I guess the more challenges are going to come your way, and the harder it's going to be, I guess, until you learn just how to do big projects, small projects. Doesn't matter, I guess, at that point.
Yeah, I think I mean, look at Wes Craven. Wes Craven made Nightmare on Elm Street, and then he makes Vampire in Brooklyn with
Oh
Eddie
man,
Murphy
yeah,
with a huge budget. A stuntman dies on the film,
yeah,
and the movie turned out to be terrible. So, and then a couple years later, he made Scream, which was a
right.
huge success. So, I think it probably doesn't matter the budget. It probably really just matters like everything combined. Like, who are the people involved? How's your crew? How's your shooting schedule? Is it enough time to do everything? Do you have enough money? I mean, all those things just factor into it, and it's just like some things you like kind of blessed or you're cursed. I mean, it's really weird the way it can all play out.
Now, out of like, people can get these movies on DVD. Are any of these movies on DVD yet, or you haven't done the transfer on them?
Well,
'Cause I,
the movie I did called Hair of the Dog, which is actually was written by Tim Clark and produced by Tim Clark, who's going to be a part of the next film I'm making, amongst a couple other people. We actually got this distributed by IndieRoad.net, which was one of the first probably independent internet release companies, and they released it straight to the net. And
ah,
I guess it wasn't successful enough. Not necessarily our movie, but that company, the way they did it, and
right.
they ended up not surviving. But that when it was distributed on a, I guess you could say, a worldwide platform. Evil Streets, when I made a movie Evil Streets back in '98, which had three films, kind of similar to Twilight Zone or Creepshow, we independently distributed that film, and it went all over the whole world, but we did it ourselves. So it wasn't like a big, giant release. But I know that people in Germany and Europe and maybe even Asia have copies of that movie. And we definitely made back our money, a little bit of a profit. So that was nice. But I've never had one go out really big, and that's the only goal and the sole goal for the next film we do, which is the one I'm going to make next.
Now, what's the name of the movie you're working on now?
The film I'm going to do next is called Devil's Five. And
Devil's
Devil's
Five.
Five,
Okay.
yeah, Devil's, it's DEVIL apostrophe S 5. If you write that out, FIVE, you can look us up on Facebook. You can like our page. We update it weekly with stuff from every director involved. And right now, the screenplays are actually being written and developed. Um, and that film is going to have 5 stories, 20 minutes each story. There's 5 different directors. I'm going to direct one that Tim Clark is writing. My friend Thad Bird, who's actually the originator of the whole project, he's in Seattle, and he wrote and is going to direct and actually star in his episode. And then my friend Brian Weiss, who's a full-time Hollywood stuntman slash stunt coordinator slash director producer, he's going to direct
So a lot of slashes.
Oh yeah, the guy's out of all of us, he's the guy who works on film full time, all the time. That's his only job. Whether he's on Spider-Man 2 or I just did Transformers, the new Transformers film. You still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Actually, we're joined by a caller. Like I said, we're going to have open lines, Terry. So be ready for callers. Caller 425, you're on the air. Please be polite. Please be nice. And you're on the air with Terry Wickham.
Can't expect me to be nice with Terry Wickham. Hey, this is Thad calling. Hey, and Terry, Thad Bird. Terry, I got to correct you. Halloween wasn't shot in 21 days. It was 21 days with 2 days of pickups. 22 days, technically. That's how much of a geek I am when it comes to, like, John Carpenter films and stuff. So, anyways, I'm the one that I'm co-executive producer with Terry on Devil's Five, and I'm directing one of the episodes along with Terry.
Very nice, very nice. And you guys are in pre-production on this right now, or you already have shot something?
Yeah, we're in pre-production. I have my script pretty much ready to go. Terry's is under construction. I'm really, really excited about the one that Terry's going to do. It's really, really cool. In fact, I told Terry, I got the whole idea to do this when I had a nightmare and I had an idea for an anthology film. And I knew it wouldn't be a feature film, so I knew it would be kind of short. And so I was watching VHS, and I was like, hey, that's a great idea. I wonder if we could do it but tie everything in together so it's all cohesive. And so I contacted Terry, and so I started doing my script. And I thought my script was pretty cool. But then when Terry, when I heard what Terry wanted to do, I was like, oh, man, mine's not as good. So I had to go back and Terry and I are great though. We work really well together. We've been working on each other's stuff for years, and so he sees things I don't see, and I see things he doesn't see. And so I went back and rewrote my script. It's better, but I'm honestly really stoked to see what Terry's going to do with this. Hopefully that's going to happen very, very soon. We're looking at maybe January, February on that.
That is so cool. And what's your story going to be about? Can you tell us anything about it at all?
Yeah, sure. Mine's called The Devil You Know. And in a nutshell, it's about a guy who's about 40 years old who was demonically possessed as a young teen, like a 13-year-old. And successfully, exercise and all that kind of stuff. And years later, the demon comes back to kind of finish the job. And
Very
so
nice.
I'm not an actor, but I realized the character was kind of me, kind of I don't want to say like I'm real successful, but a less successful version of myself. And I decided I was going to play it, and so the character has to be in shape, and so I've literally been working out to the P90X. And that,
nice. That'll work.
I'm in my 40s, and trust me, it's really hard. It's easy to start. Anyone who's interested in P90X, it's not as hard as you think, except the first one I ever did, the first time I did it, when I got done, I threw up almost. But it gets easier. but it's a lot harder in your 40s to lose weight, I'm finding.
It's hard at any age, believe me. Trust me.
Yeah.
It's never easy, my friends. Never easy. That sounds really cool, though. You wrote for yourself. Just admit it. You wanted to be in this really bad.
Yeah, because there's like a love interest in the movie that's like 20, and so they say if you're ever going to direct yourself in something, you always write in the hot youngies.
Exactly. That's it. That's kind of like living a midlife crisis on film.
Right. But I've always the nice thing. I don't know if Terry said anything. I kind of caught the tail end of what he was saying, but I got my start directing music videos in the 90s. I'm here in Seattle, Washington, so it's right during the height of the whole, Seattle music scene. And one of the bands, actually the first band I worked with was Alice in Chains. And I started working with, it was pretty neat. It was kind of cool because they were in a movie that I did, and their deal to me was they were the biggest hair band in Seattle. They were like all proud of that, and so that was their big selling point. And they were kind of glam rock, and they were Alice N, like the letter N, Chains, and then it later became Alice in Chains. And so I kind of springboarded from that, but then I found every job got harder and harder and harder. So then I tried to develop feature films, and that was really hard. And years later, I went back and I bought myself a Super 16 motion picture package and learned how to shoot. And so I started getting some jobs as a cinematographer and kind of have, shot commercials, industrials, things like that. And now we're coming up on doing Devil's 5. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
That's awesome. And you guys are looking for a major release to Devil's 5, right? You're looking for something that's going to at least maybe stream on like Netflix or something like that? Is that an idea you guys are going with?
Yeah, if I can speak for us, Terry, I think Terry, Terry will agree. Yeah, that was the whole thing because I heard Terry talking about how hard it is to make movies, and the reality is there's you can get really like everyone who's been doing it for a while has had a deal. I know Terry has had a signed deal for a film that had quite pretty nice budget. But you get to a certain point, you work on it, and then just for whatever reason, like I had a movie deal. It was a vampire film. It was about 1997, 98, and it wasn't a whole lot. It was about $3 million, but to me that was like all the money in the world. And then I got a call from the executive producer, and he said there's too many vampire films this year. I think like Blade had come out, John Carpenter's Vampires, some other stuff, and so boom, just like that. And I had really worked hard, and I had a signed contract, the whole deal. And I was very disillusioned at that point. I mean, it's really hard to be about. I mean, to be like a filmmaker, as in the verb. Like right. You're making films. You can say I'm a filmmaker, but the reality is a lot of people don't make films for years and years and years. And so, you want to be kind of more of that verb. That's what you should shoot for. So whether you do that film, digitally, just pick up a camera. And so that's kind of where Devil's 5 came in a little bit.
It's funny because you guys are, talking about how hard it is to get films done and put films out there. Do you find that that whole thing is changing a little bit now with the way streaming technology is kind of taking over? Not just about anybody can make a film and put it out there.
Right.
I think that's partially true, but but one of the things I think about that is that it's actually it works for and against the filmmaker because so many people can do it so easily. I think that we get films that are not always good, and
that's true.
Maybe the better way of saying it is it's kind of hard to.
A lot of garbage comes out. It's just the way it is.
It's probably very difficult to make a good film. Mm-hmm. It might be kind of easy to make a film, but to make a film that's really worthwhile, it takes a lot of effort and time. I remember when the guy, what was his name, that made Sinister, he said that it's very difficult to make a good horror film. I know you could say any film, but we're kind of making scary movies. So, but I remember he said it's very difficult. And I think the guys who take it seriously and that really care about it and know about it, they know it's not easy.
Yeah, no kidding. Without mentioning any names or anything, I had a film producer come to me a few months back, and he asked me if I could score a movie because I do a little music here and there, I dabble, and he asked me if I could do a little score for one of a film that he had just shot. And he brings the movie over, and he's like, "Okay, it's a rough cut. This is the first cut. Please don't judge until the music is done, and this and that." And then I started asking him a couple questions as I'm watching the video, and I'm like, "Did you guys script this out in storyboard?" And he's like, "Actually, no. We worked with no script at all." And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, "You could tell there's no script on this thing because it's really, really bad, man. It's one of the worst indie movies I've ever seen, and you could tell there was no script involved in this thing." And as I'm watching the entire film, there's some scenes that need to be redone or redubbed over. So he had actors come in and redo their lines that they had done originally without a script, mind you. I don't know how that works. He said he had the whole movie in his head, man. He's one of these artsy guys. The whole thing is in my head, and it's just I have the vision, man. And then he brings the actor over, and the actor's like, "I don't even know my lines. I have no idea what I'm going to say in this." So we had to watch the film over and over, and it's excruciatingly bad, to the point that I dropped out of the project. It was so bad, and the actors, which I found was really funny, they would turn to me every single time. Every one of them that came in and said the same thing. He's like, "This is the worst movie I've ever seen."
Wow.
And the actors were in it were ashamed that they were in this movie. It was the funniest experience ever. It's safe to say I didn't score the movie. I dropped out of the project just because it was not something I wanted to deal with. But how many projects like that do you think get done today, Terry? Or how do you think? Do you think that happens often?
Well, I think it probably does. I know I've had some friends work on situations like that where they told me going in they got excited because it looked like a gig, and I know a few friends that had situations like that. And then later on, they were disorganized. They didn't have a plan. Things went by the wayside, and eventually the films didn't get made, or they came out and they were terrible. So, I think it's probably common. But that's not the way I work, and I know it's not the way Thad works.
Can I quote Shakespeare? I mean, Shakespeare said, "The play is the thing," kind of referring to the story is everything. I think if you don't have a budget. Like Terry and I, if we had a budget for Devil's Five, like a mainstream budget, of course I would take it.
Right.
But we don't need it, and so we realized that the story has to be a lot stronger than, say, if someone came to us with $500,000, $200,000 even, because it can't just. There's so many films that get made, they get distributed, but then they're just product. They're just you watch them, and it's kind of like the equivalent of going to McDonald's,
Right.
But the thing about last year, I shot Second Unit on a real low budget independent film. I came in for a day to help out the producer and director, and their first film they actually made money with. It was very low budget. I think they shot it for $50,000-$60,000, something like that, but they made money with it. But they told me what's happening now in the film industry, and you can kind of see this. There's a greater divide. You have the mega budget films that are going like 150, 200 million, even above that, and then you have the micro budgeted films that on an independent level they're offering maybe 50,000. That's about all. So the trick is, if you can get about 50, maybe 60,000, can you make it for 10? Make a little bit of profit. It's not the days of having a Halloween that shot for, what is it, $325 or something.
Yes.
I think it's $325. I think you said $321, but I think it's $325-ish, and then go out and make $60 million in its initial box off. Well, actually, in the first 2 years, those days are kind of gone, which is kind of sad. The Blair Witch days are kind of gone, even, I think.
Yeah, Blair Witch was such an anomaly, though. I mean, that movie made such an incredible amount of money.
I know.
And it really, if you want to talk about amateur filmmaking or looking like amateur filming, that's it right there, because they literally just handy-cammed the whole thing. I mean, they weren't even trying, I think, and that made so much money. But it goes into, what me and Adesai used to talk a lot about is the marketing of these films, and that's really where it all stands. It's how you market the film. If you have even a crappy product, if you market it properly, it could take off. Look at the Blair Witch. Perfect example.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't the first found footage movie. I think Cannibal Holocaust that came out in, I believe, 1979, 1980 is a much better film. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's really good. I think anyway.
Sadly, I've seen it. Yes.
But the Blair Witch, I think it's right before a lot of the social media. I think it came out in, was it 99, something like that. so it was like really fresh, and it was just like people were ready for something totally different. And then once they consume that, they go on to the next thing. It's kind of like a locust or something. I guess.
Which is, it's funny because that was done on really cheap budget, the handheld camera and everything. Then they made an actual studio film for the follow-up, the Blair Witch Project 2, which had a bigger budget, looked like a movie, and that bombed.
Yeah, that was actually $10 million, I think.
Yeah, and it was different director. And the thing about the Blair Witch guys who made the first film, proof that it was all the marketing and not their filmmaking ability is you truly haven't heard from those guys since.
Yeah, ever.
So it was really, like you said, an anomaly. And to me, it wasn't a case of great filmmaking. It was a case of great marketing. I mean, because I saw the movie. I think I told the story once on one of the Outside shows I was on, but I saw Blair Witch at a really early preview. I was writing for FearsMag.com at the time, and me and a couple of the other editors and writers from the magazine got invited to a premiere. Now, that movie came out, I believe, in June of 1999, and because it came out about a week before The Sixth Sense. We saw it in March.
Well, actually, it came out in July, I believe, July 16th.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
So I saw it in March.
Okay.
So I saw it about, a good few months before it came out. And I remember when I saw it, I liked the setup and the idea and everything, but to me it just made no sense, the payoff and everything. So I guess I got so interested because everyone told me it was a Sundance hit and all these people were talking about it and stuff like that. So the hype was really high, but I think the product in itself, when I saw it, I was a little disappointed.
Terry, I remember talking to you about that when you saw it, and you told me?
What's that?
You said nothing happens.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Literally, nothing happens. That's accurate. Nothing does happen. It's like, it's an hour of nothingness. It's like, really? An hour and 30 minutes of nothing.
Yeah,
and the camera falls at the end. I'm like, that's it?
And actually, though, Terry, one of the directors, Eduardo Sanchez, I hope I'm not massacring his name, he actually has done some pretty good stuff. If anyone has not seen the movie Altered...
Oh, I like that. But,
yeah.
But you know what I meant? I meant like in a public film knowledge success. We may have seen that, and I've seen actually a couple of his other films, but I don't think they've made any films that anybody else really knows about other than its quirkies. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but when your movie makes $248 million worldwide on a $60,000 budget, it doesn't matter. You could do whatever the heck you want for the rest of your life and just hang out and chill and be happy.
Right.
You don't have to continue to make big budget movies. You don't have to make anything. You just relax at home with the family. You made $248 million on a $60,000. I'm sure they got a good cut of that money. They're not hurting for money right now.
No, and I'm not disputing that, but this goes back to what you said early in our conversation.
Yeah.
How easy or how hard it is to make films after the first one. And the truth is, look at those guys.
Yeah.
I mean, they haven't had anything that really hit gangbusters or anything like, or a big profile movie. I'm sure they've tried. I know they both individually have made movies, but look, they made a huge success film and they haven't had it easy, right?
No, it's true. It's very true. Now they've done a couple other projects here and there, but yeah, nothing to that extent. Even though wasn't have you ever seen the movie Solstice? Wasn't that directed by Daniel Myrick, I believe is his name?
Oh, isn't that the one that takes place in Iraq or Afghanistan? I'm wrong.
No. It's it's about a twin sister who has some kind of who commits suicide. It's a weird movie.
I haven't seen that one yet. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's a weird independent movie that came out. I think that's probably the best movie they've come out. That came out in 08 or 09 or something. It had a pretty decent cast. Sean Ashmore from X-Men, I think. I think he's the one in X-Men. He's one of the Ashmore twins. Was in that. So, decent cast. I mean, it wasn't like a horrible movie either. It was pretty good. But yeah, no, you're right. They really just kind of like laid low and not really done much since that movie. Which is kind of weird because you would expect the buzz from that movie to be, tremendous for them for the next project.
Oh, yeah, you would think so.
Yeah.
I think it's unfortunate. I was just going to say, I think it's unfortunate they had to do a Blair Witch 2. Because actually, I think that movie's quite good. The only problem was it had nothing really to do with the first one, and it was so off the scale different from the first one. It was really rejected in the marketplace. But it has some really scary moments, I think. Actually, Stephen King has also said that he really likes that movie a lot.
Yeah, but it was just so different, and it really pissed off the fan base from the first one.
Right,
really
just like Return of the
yeah.
Living Dead 3.
Correct. Yeah, it was too much of a departure. And it's funny because I've had conversations with people about like the Paranormal Activity movies, for example, and they've often told me, "Well, why don't they make like a regular movie for like one of the sequels?" I'm like, because it'll lose, the whole like luster of like what Paranormal Activity movies are, which is the whole handheld camera, or not handheld, but like the video camera format of like being stationary somewhere, like it's really just a camera at the house. That kind of feel is what they're going for, and you would lose that feel if you have a regular movie, and that's really what they're doing at. And that's another project that really took off, and they've spun like I don't know how many sequels now, and they've all made a lot of money. So imagine if they would have made another Blair Witch in the same vein, the same style as the original. Might have done a lot better.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of times filmmakers think of themselves as artists too much. I mean, in the end, you're kind of selling widgets. So, just like example I like to use is when Boeing was planning on doing the 777. Boeing actually is up here where I live, but anyway, they went out to all the airlines to ask them for their input, and there were several major airlines like United that gave them a lot of input they never would have known. So they kind of tailor-made it based off of what their customers' input was. And so when the 777 rolled off the assembly lines, it was a huge success because they already know who their customers were. And I think filmmakers, they make a film first that you spend all this money, you get all these resources, you make your product, and then you go out to find if there's anyone who is even buying your product. I mean, it wouldn't make any sense to do a gothic, ghost film if everyone wants, like, I don't know, slasher films. See, so it would make no sense. So I think it's really important that you need to go out and research the market first and know, who's buying what. I mean, who's going to buy this? And then tailor-make it for them.
In relation to that, maybe you could tell Jackal and his audience how Devil's Five actually came to be. I know you mentioned the other part, but wasn't it based on a conversation you had with a couple filmmakers that were successful at doing found footage movies? And then what they said. Tell the story.
Yeah, I kind of alluded to that. I just kind of... This is going to sound really cheesy, so I apologize in advance. But I saw this. I'm a part of a filmmaking board here in Seattle, and I saw this this ad that said, they need a cinematographer right away to shoot some pickup shots. Must be okay with nudity. And so I was like, that sounds like fun. No, but actually that's true. But I called them up, and these guys were really, really intelligent. One of them was a former talk show host on the radio. In fact, I think he still is in Montana. But they were the ones that I was talking about who had sold their first film, been very successful about it. And then they were asking other distributors, what are you looking for? And it was the found footage movies. People couldn't get enough of that. And so I was working on their second feature, which is a really cool alien abduction film. And we were shooting a bunch of little vignettes for it. And so that's why they did it. Now, they had aspirations to do more like, they wanted to talk to me about shooting something on film. I don't know if that's going to be viable because Kodak just went out of business. I'm kind of sad about that. But, they kind of aspired more towards the bigger budgets. But, they wanted to be working filmmakers. And so they learned what the market would bear, and so that's the direction they went. That's why they did that.
Yeah, found footage is still very popular. It really is.
And if it's done right, it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And Terry's not as big a fan of the VHS movies as I am, and they're obviously flawed, in certain ways because sometimes the stories are not as coherent as you'd like. But maybe they're going for truly the found footage vein. But they're fun and they're scary and they deliver the goods. And I just watched VHS 2 last night with a bunch of 14-year-olds. Boy, they loved it. If ever there was a film that's tailor-made for 14-year-old boys, that is it. Because they don't care. They don't care about the nuances of story and stuff like that. They just, and it's, I don't know, it kind of bums me out that people don't really invest in films as much in terms of watching them, character development and all that kind of stuff. They want it now. They want it loud. They want it boom, 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 boom. And it's that's kind of where it's
That's
at.
the ADD generation we're in right now that we're living in.
Hey, that's a good way to put it. That's exactly it. And so, so what Terry and I are trying to kind of, obviously we want to cater to that market because that's who would buy the product. But
right.
We also, we want to throw in some of our own ideas and have some cool stuff and have it tie together, have it satisfying for us. Because I think in the end, if you don't make films that satisfy you on some level, then you'll just be a crappy filmmaker. I mean, any product, even if you sell out, you're doing, if you get to the level of doing a studio film, if you're just doing it for a paycheck, those are the worst kind of films. There's got to be some reason to do it. There's got to be something that gets you up in the morning.
I don't think there's any filmmaker that sets out to make a bad movie, even the ones who sell out, quote-unquote, to the studios. Like, for example, I've gotten into this discussion with friends who, I hate Batman and Robin, the movie. I hate that movie. One of the worst films ever made in the history of film. But I don't think that Joel Schumacher literally got up in the morning and said, you know what, today I'm going to go to the studio, I'm going to make a bad movie. Like, I don't think that crossed his mind. Like, while he was making the movie, he probably thought this is going to be good. It's funny you mentioned that film because I have a theory about that. I think when you have someone like Joel Schumacher who's done some very, very successful films, you have kind of what I call the Emperor's New Clothes syndrome, where no one wants to tell Joe Schumacher it's a bad idea. So when he goes to the production designer and says, hey, how about you put some nipples on that Batman suit? They're like, oh, that'd be great. You see what I'm saying? And so I think you have all these yes men and yes women, and they don't want to tell the director, God, what a bad idea. And so then he's when the film comes out, he's standing buck naked, and everyone's laughing at him. That's, people got to be you have to be honest. But, you don't want to hurt people's feelings, but you get a lot of that. And I found, actually, it was very strange. When I directed my first music video, up to that point, I had never done anything professionally. I'd just done my own little films, And I spent the first half of the day thinking I was going to get fired because I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to find out that I'm a fraud. And people would come up to me and they'd say, Thad, what do you think we should do here? And I honestly didn't have a clue. And I would just make something up. Hey, we should do this. And they'd go, wow, that's a great idea. And it was really strange because I don't like people kissing my butt. And it was just a weird feeling that everyone was doing that when I was kind of winging it. But, it turned out okay. But I think, when you go on the bigger levels, the bigger budgets, boy, the ass kissing gets that much bigger. I mean, you can just imagine. No kidding.
Then you have nipples on Batman suits.
And I also think on the big budget films, I don't know this firsthand, but just from what I've heard from people, I also think like what Thad was saying is true. When you're a big director and you're spending a lot of money on those films by the minute, I remember I was talking to someone that worked on Terminator 2. He was a stunt guy, or I think he was a driver. And I said, what was it like to work with Jim Cameron? And they said, well, who's one of my two favorite directors. He said, if you have an idea, he'll listen to it. And if he uses it and you're wrong, and you just cost the production time and money, he will not only berate you in front of everyone, but there's a good chance you'll lose your job. So I think that people probably also fear making suggestions or doing things because they're afraid to lose their job or to get ridiculed.
Yeah, that happened a lot to the folks who were on board with Star Wars, the prequels, with George Lucas also. I'm sure way too many yes men and not enough people saying, Jar Jar, maybe not a good idea. What do you think? No?
Yeah, but
should we tone it down a little bit?
You want to know what shocked me, though? When I first... I kind of have like three parts to my filmmaking career. My first part where I was truly an amateur, didn't really know what I was doing, but kind of learned as I went. And then I literally talked myself onto a set on getting my first job directing music videos. And I actually got pretty good at that. That was the second part. And then the third phase started when I started doing some cinematography. And then, I directed my own stuff as well. But owning my own camera got me onto film sets. And the thing that really shocked me is there's a lot of incompetence, even on like union films. I worked on one film in particular I don't want to mention it. It played at Sundance, and apparently it got a standing ovation, but it was horrible, absolutely horrible. And it had a cast that you would recognize, and it was a union film, and the DP had worked for me as a gaffer in my early days as doing music videos. and he was really good. He'd work on stuff. Well, actually, I don't want to give out too much information, but he'd work on really, really big projects. But he was horrible as a DP, and everyone around him seemed incompetent, and it seemed like the movie they were making was just horrible. The lighting was horrible. The camera angles were horrible. Everything was just. I was just amazed at how incompetent people were.
And they got a standing ovation at Cannes, really?
Yeah, seriously, if you saw this film, you would. I think maybe there's like a crowd mentality. I don't know because I haven't been there, but it's possible there's a crowd mentality that everyone thinks it's going to be great, and so again, it's the emperor's new clothes.
Right.
No one wants to say, "Hey, I think this is a piece of crap," because then you're not in the know, and if you're not in the know, you're not cool.
Something similar happened to me back in the '90s. I don't know if you guys remember Planet Hollywood. Remember that place?
Yes.
Is that still around?
I think they're defunct already. They're done. But back in the 90s when they were still around, they had one in Coconut Grove down here in Miami. And me and a buddy of mine went out to see a movie that night at the theater right next to Planet Hollywood. And they were premiering the movie The Pest for John Leguizamo. I don't know if you guys seen that movie, but it's a comedy. It's kind of like Ace Ventura-ish, where he's kind of that kind of character. Really goofy comedy, very slapstick comedy. And we go to the theater just, goofing around. I used to work at the movie theaters back then, so I could always get in free wherever I went. And I went in, and we walk in, and literally, like, every poster in the wall was the movie The Pest. And we were like, holy crap, this is going to be, like, the greatest film ever made. Like, there's, like, 20 theaters all playing The Pest. This is incredible. And we're walking around, and we're like, what's going on here? And my friend who was a manager at the theater tells me, oh, no, they're premiering the movie. They're going to have a big party later on at Planet Hollywood next door. It's, a big event. It's the first time they premiere a movie here at Coco Walk. It's a big deal. So he goes, you want to go see it? Go check out the movie. So we go in, me and my friend, to see The Pest. And the movie ends, and I look at my friend, and he looks at me, and we're like, we just saw probably the worst comedy ever made. Like, there's very few jokes that land and actually make you laugh in this movie. It's, like, very, very bad, And then all of a sudden, we see people stand up and start applauding, and we're like, wait a second, we're in the Twilight Zone? People were clapping, and we're like, are we being punked? And this was before punked ever existed. But we looked at each other, and we're like, is this the Twilight Zone? What's going on? And then it turned out that John Leguizamo was there. And he was part of the audience. He was sitting down. He was there with Jennifer Lopez. A bunch of celebrities were there. We had no clue. We literally were walking out like, what the hell's going on? Like, this is bizarre. Bizarre behavior. And as we walk out, we see John Leguizamo and all of them walk out. And we're like, oh, no wonder people are clapping. Nobody wants to be rude and not clap or say, this movie sucks. Which is really what they should have said, because it was a really bad movie. But John Leguizamo, super nice guy, by the way. Just got a name drop. Really nice guy. Got to meet him. We hung out at Planet Hollywood. He was aces, man. Can't say nothing bad about the guy. But the movie was terrible. Terrible movie.
Something I wanted to throw in here, since we were talking Devil's Five, is me and Thad are definitely opposite of that, even as friends. We will tell each other what we think is good or bad. And of course, when it all comes down to it, whether it's his script or my script, we both have to be the ultimate author of those. But when he came to me with Devil's Five, he had an idea to... It was basically the device on what these films would hinge around. Whereas, say, VHS, it's the videotapes, and they watch them, and those are the movies. So Thad came with this one idea, and I told him straight out, pretty much, that I thought that it was that I thought there could be something better, and so I didn't just say yes, let's do it. I said, I'm intrigued, but let me think about it. And after I thought about it, I just thought that his idea, not that he was trying to ape VHS, but was kind of similar. And I also think that found footage, this isn't Thad's idea, but as a whole, found footage movies, one of the things that really bothers me, as a journalist, I review a lot of them. As a fan, I see them. I think that usually, because there's no money usually, that the idea is really, really tiny.
Right.
And even if you have no money, I think you can make a bigger idea. And so when I thought about Thad's idea, I thought it kind of fell a little bit into that trap. And I thought, how can I make it bigger? So I for some reason, because we're found footage and we're restricted to that style, even though I'm going to kind of try to screw with that a little bit, I came up with this idea, and I presented it to Thad, and you could tell him your reaction to it, Thad, but right away you were like, this is better than the idea I had.
Well, yeah, and it's. I think if any, aspiring filmmakers are listening right now, Terry and I have both been making films, and one one form or another over 20 years. And I think the most important thing is, don't doubt yourself. Do not listen to what you kind of take what people have with a grain of salt, but if you really feel strongly about something, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Steven Spielberg, listen to him. But short of that, seriously, some of the worst advice I've ever gotten came from the producers that I was working with that had done some pretty big stuff. And what it came down to is they didn't know any better than I did. And so don't second guess yourself. I mean, like I was talking earlier about how I was shocked when I started getting onto movie sets at how incompetent some things were. Now,
right.
Maybe it was the level of the budget. Maybe on big budget stuff, it's rare that you see really bad photography and big budget stuff.
Right.
But the point is, all these people, they could talk circles around me because they knew all the jargon. They knew a lot more of the technical stuff. But aesthetically, they didn't know what they were doing. They couldn't make an image that was really pleasing. They didn't know that much about making really good lighting, creating a mood, and it was kind of an eye opener. And so I would say, to anyone who wants to make movies, just go out and do it. Pay close attention to what's come before you. Try to learn as much as you can, but ultimately you just have to do it.
Yeah. So, Dad, why did you agree with me when I told you I thought that your original idea wasn't as good as the one I had come up with? What made you agree to that?
Because you threatened to walk. No, I'm just kidding. No. Okay. So if anyone wants to direct, here's the most important thing. It is impossible to have all the good ideas in your head. It's right. Impossible. You never know where a good idea is going to come from. It's almost like being a manager, or where you need to know how to take this idea, and how to make it fit, into the best overall project. And right. So you don't need to have the best ideas, but to be a good director, you need to recognize the best ideas. That's the key. And you have to recognize that you're not going to have the best ideas. You don't know where they're going to come from. But sometimes, when you're shooting, sometimes it's more important not to have the best ideas, but to get it done. It really depends on, the budget constraints, the time constraints. So you also need to know when to dial it off as well.
Right.
But certainly in the pre-production phase, when you're developing your story, you really can't have a thick skin. You really have to be flexible, and you need to recognize a good idea. And so Terry and I do that to each other all the time. We don't have much of an ego going back and forth. If something's a good idea, we don't care who has it because it makes the project better. And so he's always helped me on my scripts. I've always helped him on his. And this is actually the first time we've officially worked together, so it'll be kind of cool. But that's it. Kind of put your ego on hold and look at what's going to serve the project the best, I'd say.
And have that determination, I'm sure, to continue on, even if you get somebody who doesn't believe in your project, and just continue forward and still work on projects. I mean, you guys brought up Nightmare on Elm Street earlier, and there's a project that went through a couple studios before it landed on New Line Cinema and became what it became. But studios heard that, originally, and they were like, we don't think that's going to work, Wes. People didn't believe in that project, amazingly enough.
Wes Craven got some very, very cruel rejection letters. I don't know if you on one of the, I don't know if it's on the Blu-ray, but on the Laserdisc, he actually has his rejection letters, and people were like really just cruel about it, unnecessarily.
And it turned out to be one of the greatest horror movies ever made. I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street to me is still, to this day, one of the finest pieces of horror movies from the 80s.
Definitely.
I remember seeing it with a couple guys that were older than me, like 10 years older than me, and one of them was actually cowering in his seat as he watched it. I remember thinking that was kind of odd, but literally cowering in his seat. So, it's a great film.
Yeah, great movie, launched a lot of careers. George Lucas is another one. He went through a couple different studios for Star Wars. Can you imagine being like Fox and turning down, or being one of these studios that turned down Star Wars and then seeing what that became?
Yeah, that would suck.
Well,
oh my goodness!
I read a really good book this year written by William Friedkin, the Exorcist director, and he was saying early in his book, I think I even read this to Thad over the phone, but he was saying that he actually got offered the opportunity to invest or be a producer on Star Wars. He read it and he goes, "This doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think it's successful." And he turned it down. And we all know where Star Wars turned out to. He's the same guy who, in I think the first paragraph of the book, said he got a drawing from some guy named Bisquade or whatever, and he gave it to him in his production office, and he looked at it. He said, "I'm a big fan of your films." He looked at the drawing. He threw it in the garbage. He said, "Now one of those drawings from that time is worth like $15 million."
That's why I've become a hoarder. Anytime somebody gives me anything, I just like put it away and I don't throw it away.
and he also said he got a cassette tape sent to him in the mail from some young composer, and he listened to the song. It was like some disco songs, and he's like, "That's not my thing." This is when he was making the movie Cruising with Al Pacino, 1980, I guess, and he threw the cassette in the garbage. It was from Prince.
Wow, are you kidding me?
Yep, it's a true story.
Wow, that's incredible.
But you know what? What if the flip side to that is, what if you said yes? You don't understand something, you hate it, and you say yes to it, and it turns out to be the worst piece of crap ever made. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, at least when you turn it down because you don't like it, at least you're turning it down on your terms. So, I've had, look, I've had more bands that have come my way that have gone on to be big than I've actually got to direct big bands, if that makes any sense. So the bands that I turned down were the bigger. Those would have been the better ones to have done music videos for. But for whatever reason, I listened to other people, or I passed on them, or whatever, and I shouldn't have. But but see, that was me listening to someone else. So that, boy, I got to tell you, that really haunts you. That really makes you feel terrible when you should have done it, but you listened to someone else because you thought they knew more than you did, and then they were wrong. See, that's the worst. So if you turn it down on your own terms, at least you have your dignity, because if you don't like something, say you don't like the past. I mean, it would have been rude for you to boo, at that
It would have, because he's there, but, the movie sucked.
Right. I guess politely clapping would have been appropriate if he's there. I mean, standing, I don't know.
This is something kind of like off base from what we're talking about, yet related. I don't know about you, Thad, but I've had a couple of my movies actually play in a movie theater setting. Doesn't mean a full release, where I was actually in the audience watching. Usually, obviously, a premiere of my movie. I can remember one in New York City. It was Hair of the Dog, which involves one of the writers that might be part of this. Looks like he's going to be part of this film we're doing, Devil's Five, Tim Clark. And I remember sitting in the audience. It was New York City, my first time a movie playing in Manhattan. I'm sitting with the crowd. I was like right in about the middle of the theater. And I think it's the only movie in my whole life that I actually thought, I don't know if I ever told you this, but while I was watching it for like the first, especially like first 15, 20 minutes, my legs were shaking uncontrollably. I was so scared. I'd seen the movie thousands of times at that point in the editing room and shooting and all that, and I knew it worked, but you don't know what the audience is going to think. And I was scared out of my mind because it was with a major city crowd. I didn't know what they're going to think of it. It might have been it played for a couple of dates, actually, not like a movie premiere. That's right. I might be remembering this wrong. I think it was actually, we played it like 5 or 6 days or something like that, and it was where people could just come off the street. So I had no idea what they were going to do. I was scared out of my mind.
I so understand what you went through, because there was a movie that I scored in 2005 called Motel, a local movie, independent movie. They premiered it at Cinema Paradiso down here in Miami, and I went to the premiere, and I scored the entire film pretty much on my own. There's like one scene that I didn't score, which was there originally. The director put in the music himself because he really liked that piece of music. But I scored everything else, sound effects, everything. And the whole time I'm sitting there and I'm like shaking, I was literally nervous that people are going to judge my work as a composer. And I'm like literally nervous that people are going to start saying, "This music sucks, this makes no sense." But at the end of the film, people started clapping, and it was like this joy just came over me, like they liked the work. And the one thing that I kept hearing was how great the score was, the music, how well it went. And people didn't know that I was one who scored this. I was just like standing there saying, "Yes, they like my work," like a complete dork, by the way. But that thrilled me. That got me to the point that I wanted to get more and more into film. Mind you, that was back in 2005. Now we're here at 2013, and I'm still kind of like, wanting to do more movies. And it really is it's a different experience, isn't it, when you're in that situation? Even though I understand you get nervous, but when you do get that positive feedback, man, there's nothing better than that.
Yeah, you know what I found with that particular experience was, you think the movie's going to play a certain way with the audience based on what happens, and what I found was they're going to react to it not always the same. Like they might find stuff funny that you didn't realize would be funny to them, and then maybe other points they get scared. You could tell when they get quiet, they're like really on the edge of the seat. So it was really, even when they laughed at places I didn't expect, I didn't take that necessarily as bad, because you could tell they were being, I guess you could say, entertained. So for me, that was really great. It was definitely something you can't control. It's amazing how much you make a movie and you try to do all these things to get a reaction from an audience, but really in the end they're going to react their own way, and I think that's part of the reason why it's so scary too, because you don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah, no, that's so true. There's a scene in Motel where the main girl gets raped, and it's like a really brutal scene. It's like really messed up.
Kind of a family film?
Yeah, no, this is definitely not a G-rated movie for Disney, but it's a really messed up scene, and people were laughing at some of the scenes, and I'm like, why are they laughing?
Interesting.
It makes no sense, but they laughed at a couple of the scenes that had to do with rape, and I'm like, what an audience! This is weird.
No, I was just going to mention. So, I started my career, I guess, kind of professionally doing music videos. First producer I ever worked with said that music videos don't lead to features, and by golly, she was right. But so I tried to get out of that and tried to get more into doing regular films, but I keep getting pulled back into it. And I have a friend. His name's Tim Branham. Tim's a really interesting guy. He's played with everyone in the music business. And he actually has the distinction of producing the very first Alice in Chains album, which is not the facelift one. It's the one that's before that. But Tim has had some success on and off, but his record label went under, and so kind of pulled the rug out from under his his feet. So now he decided to go on his own, and so I was talking to Tim, and we decided we were going to do a music video. And I thought it'd be really cool. He has a song called Enemy, and for some reason I just saw Nosferatu. Not the silent version, but I don't know if have you seen the 1979, the Werner Herzog version?
Long time ago, yeah.
Yeah, I actually think it's a really, really great remake. So we kind of recreated scenes from that movie more than the silent version. And I thought it'd be really easy, doing it on a budget. But it's really hard. If you're going to do a period film, make sure you already have the costumes. Make sure you already have the props. My 14-year-old son, and I built all the sets, and it took weeks and weeks and weeks to do. But it's coming out at the end of this month. I can't tell you the exact release date yet because we're actually filming pickup shots next weekend, and it's very sad. But this may be the last time I ever shoot actual film. So,
oh wow.
Yeah.
Going digital, huh?
Yeah, I don't think I have a choice. But yeah, we have a few pickup shots to do, but it's basically edited. We just need to drop in the rest of the shots. But Tim is really cool. It's going to be a really cool music video, I promise. And if you go to timbranham.com, that's BRANOM.com, or look him up on Facebook. Shoot him a friend request. Tim likes to whore himself out. He'll definitely honor your friend request. But he makes really good music, and he's a really great guy, really great artist. And so I just wanted to throw that out there. But it's so sad that this will be It's weird to think that this may be the last time I actually run film ever.
No, why is that? Are you literally doing it on purpose, or
you not shooting film anymore?
Yeah, it's funny that this is going to be probably the last time you shoot on film. I don't know if you guys heard, J.J. Abrams just announced that he's going to shoot the next Star Wars movie on film, on 35mm film. So he's kind of doing the backwards thing. They're going from digital back to film.
Oh, is that right? He's probably more concerned with the archiving. Doing anything digital archiving becomes kind of problematic. There's a lot of different factors on that. Film archives a lot better. But my understanding is Kodak just went out of business. I don't know too much because I don't get to shoot film all that often. And so Yeah, I would love to shoot more film, but the reality is when you're trying to do it on a budget. See, I thought once I had all
easy.
my I thought once I had all my own equipment, and I have everything you need to make movies, but I thought, it'd be, I could just go out and make movies. It's not that way. Film stock's very expensive. You have to pay for developing. Then you have the transfer costs, and then you have to pay to usually digitize it. Sometimes you can transfer straight to a hard drive, but there's just so many steps. And one of the worst things is you don't get to see your footage right away. So
that's all going to be changed if you go digital, Thad.
Yeah, that's
right. True. So on this project, it was literally Tim flew up here from L.A. to shoot his stuff. So we shot all the sync stuff of him, singing to the song, and then we had to recreate all the other stuff with actors. And so it was basically like we were blowing the whole budget, bringing Tim up and doing that. And then he had to go back to L.A., and then I didn't know if we had it in the can, so to speak, because I couldn't see it until the next week. So that was nerve-wracking. But then we spent even more money on, recreating all the sets, and just like, renting the period costumes is very, very expensive. And so literally we had 2/3 of the budget was spent on that one day, and then it was done, and we had to destroy the sets because I had to get it out of the warehouse, and I didn't know if I had it. I didn't know if the film, was going to go bad, or if they were going to screw up at the lab, or if there was going to be like sometimes you can get, your magazine can scratch your negative, and you have this line all the way through it. You can get dirt in the gate, which translates these big specks on your, when you project it or when you look at it through telecine. And so that's not the way I like to make movies. It's really nerve-wracking. But, when you actually do make good images, though, it's pretty exhilarating, though, because then you have it on film.
Did either one of you guys catch the PBS special that Keanu Reeves hosted about film versus digital that was on about a month ago? Did you catch that?
No, I missed that.
It was basically a documentary film that Keanu Reeves made where he wanted to get the input of all the professionals working, cinematographers, editors, especially directors, on why you should go film over video or vice versa, or digital. And all of them were most of them were going towards digital. And Robert Rodriguez was one of the guys who probably said it best. He said, why on earth would you want to shoot film when you don't know what you're getting? It costs so much more to process it. If you have to do multiple takes, you might not be able to afford to do it. He says if you do digital, you shoot as many times as you want. You can see it right away, and you don't have to worry about all the people waiting to set up all the lights for it, because I guess digital is so much quicker. He just goes, I'll never shoot film again. There's no reason why I would.
Well, there's also the other unfortunate part where I'll show it, like I said, my son's 14, and we always have his friends over, and we watch movies and stuff. And sometimes I'll show them, like, something I did on film and, like, see how good that looks? And they can't tell a difference. So I think the younger generations, they don't even care anymore. I hate to say that because film looks so beautiful. Even the best digital stuff, well, some of the really, really high-end stuff has finally gotten to where film is. But generally speaking, it's just not as good. Film is still, even Super 16 transferred high def.
Yeah, there is something about using actual film stock that you can never replace. I mean, I completely agree. Look, and the perfect example is Star Wars. The original series shot on film. The prequels not shot on film, on digital for the most part. And you can tell that difference as you go into the digital, which is the sequel they made, Attack of the Clones. That was the first fully digital movie.
Yeah,
And here's the thing. George Lucas actually changed the way films are made twice in his career. First time in the 70s when he made Star Wars: The New Hope, and then when he made Attack of the Clones, making it all digital. That's the first time that it's ever been done like that. So twice he changed filmmaking in his life.
Yeah, and I always thought that was the oddest title, Attack of the Clones, because it almost sounds like Attack of the Clowns. You know what I mean?
from outer space. No less.
I have a question for you two
which is a great film, by the way.
Yeah.
I have an interesting question because it's Halloween coming up and it's October and it's the horror film month, and I know we live for that stuff. I have a question because I think you guys are probably from two slightly different age groups. Which Dawn of the Dead is better, the 1978 George Romero film or the remake from 2004? which one is better and why? What would you both say in terms of your own argument? Because I think you're probably different opinions on that.
You want me to go first, or you want to go first?
Yeah, you go first, Mr. Jackal. It's your show.
Well, since it is my show, I will go first. Honestly, I think the original's still better. I did not like the remake. I'm not a fan of Snyder's. I'm not a fan of his work or his films. I hated Men of Steel, so that tells you right there what I think of Zack Snyder. But no, I enjoy the original a whole lot better.
Wow, I'm surprised because I thought for sure you'd go the other way.
Yeah. See, I will surprise you on Inside the Jackal's Head, everyone.
What
Just every once in a while.
What would you say, Thad?
Well, Dawn of the Dead's my favorite film, and to tell you how much of a geek I am, when I went on IMDb looking up Dawn of the Dead, I actually emailed them to tell them they had some of their facts wrong. And so, when Terry said,
"Man, that is dorky."
It is. I mean, I know things I shouldn't know. I probably know things that George Romero has forgotten. But so it's funny when Terry says 1978. He's actually correct. I mean, it came out here in 1979, so you'll always see Dawn of the Dead in 1979. But it was released in Europe in 1978. It was just because of the ratings system that wanted to slap it with an X, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. It's not that gory. That it wasn't released till 1979. But the thing about the remake, I thought it was good. But there's some things that left me cold. Like I didn't like the baby, like the zombie giving birth to a baby. That just was really, rubbed me the wrong way. And the thing that was missing from the new Dawn of the Dead, the remake, and I'm sure the Jackal will agree with me, it was missing all the nuances. It was missing the kind of the statement on consumerism. When I go to a mall, I love looking at all the people shopping, and they look just like the zombies in Dawn of the Dead. It's hysterical. And there's a lot going under the surface. So Dawn of the Dead, if you just want to watch a cool action horror film and see heads explode and zombies ripping guts out, you got that. But if you want a film that goes a little bit beyond that and has some social commentary, that's also there. And so it's one of those films that you can watch over and over and over. To me, I call it the Mount Everest of zombie films. It's impossible to you can make a good zombie film and get close, but you'll never make a better film than Dawn of the Dead. It was there first.
And you know what I find interesting. You know what I find interesting about the whole slow zombie versus fast zombie argument is if you look at, and I'm not saying I hated the new Dawn of the Dead. I didn't like it as much as the original, but I always thought that the slow zombies made more sense because I think Tom Savini, I heard him say recently, if you think about it, if you're actually like dead, why would that make you like stronger and more muscular and faster? It just from a body sense makes no sense. Right. And look at The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead is more like the Romero zombies, and that's probably the best TV show I've ever seen.
One of the scariest nightmares I ever had. It was probably right after I saw Terminator. There was a Terminator-like robot coming after me, but it couldn't run. It would just like walk towards me, so I could easily outrun it, but it would never stop. And so I could go to a different city, and before this thing would eventually catch up to me. And to me, that was scary. It wasn't the fact that it could run after me; it was the fact that it never stopped. And it would eventually, wear me out. And I remember that nightmare very vividly, and it was really scary. And that's what I love about the slow zombies. You're kind of complacent, you think you can handle it, and then they all kind of mob together. And I always love that.
Well, there's also that buildup of hype, or not hype, but anticipation of the zombie coming to get you, or the zombie killing the protagonist in the film. It's kind of like in every slasher movie where you have the killer who walks really slow, but he always catches his victims, no matter if they're running through the woods.
Like Michael Myers in Halloween.
Right. Like Michael Myers, Jason, even Freddy, they just walk slowly towards the victim. And there's that buildup of tension as they're getting closer and closer. That helps. It really does. Recently I watched a zombie movie, where the zombies were all over the place running, and the movie was good, but it really lacked that element. And I'm talking about World War Z. What do you guys think of that film?
Did you see it? Oh, yeah, you saw it, Terry.
Yeah, I'll tell you, overall I liked it, and what I liked about it the most was I thought it was going to be wall-to-wall zombies, like the trailer, the Coming Attractions trailer, where they were going up that wall and they were all over the place. If the whole movie would have been like that, I think it would not have been very good. But I liked, if you look at the film as a whole, it starts out with all that crazy chaotic, tons of zombies in cities overrunning all that. And what happens if you look at the film, it becomes from a lot of zombies to less zombies to less
Right.
zombies to less zombies. Pretty soon you got Brad Pitt in a room with that one zombie. So
Right.
I thought that it made it zombie more intimate than just being a big giant crowd. And I thought that that was the key to the whole movie because you can't really you can't really relate, I don't think, to showing all the zombies all the time. You got to kind of almost make them characters, like maybe Romero did with Bub in Day of the Dead, where you can get a character almost, or the Harry Krishner zombie in Dawn of the Dead, or one of those more iconic zombies in Dawn of the Dead, the guy at the airport, or the that was what made World War Z to me good, was that it became more about less, and that's always better, I think, in horror films.
I completely agree. Yeah.
Didn't they spend wasn't that like $230 million, something like that?
Yeah,
Yeah, it had a huge budget.
Can you imagine if you gave George Romero $230 million and said,
Oh
"Hey,
my
George,
God.
go make a." The only thing I didn't like about World War Z is right when they were going to cut to the, like the machete cutting off the arm, kind of ripping off Day of the Dead, of course, but
Right.
they cut away. So I guess that's the difference between like a George Romero zombie movie and a PG-13 zombie movie. But when you're $230 million, you can't do an R, you can't do an NC-17 or unrated. So
Right. Yeah. No, it's a big studio film. Look, I think there were graphic. There's enough gore and graphic scenes in it to please the audience without going overboard and not losing that PG-13. Because when you're, like you said, the budget was like 190 or 200 million, plus you have to add all the money they add just to give the movie any buzz and just put it out there, and that costs a lot of money. So 230, 240 million is probably what they spent on the overall budget. To spend that kind of money on a film, you really want to get your target audience and not lose them. And I understand why they would do that and cut away from some scenes were just a little too gory. But they showed you a lot in that movie. I mean, for PG-13, I mean that movie had a lot of gore in it. It really, it didn't go overboard, but it really did have a little bit of gore in it.
No, I know we're coming down to the last short while on your show here.
Yep.
I just wanted to say, from my point of view, as far as Devil's Five, one of the things I'm hoping that we're able to achieve is to make it more than just a little bit of like a amusement park ride. I think some of the movies I've seen recently that were found footage, low budget movies, similar to what we're going to be doing, they kind of all revert to the same format, where it's not really about the story. It's just about things chasing you, and whether it be Quarantine chasing you up and down the stairs of that building, or whether it be, which is Wreck, as we know, the remake of Wreck, or if it's VHS where they're chasing you as zombies when you're on a bike, or if it's in Wreck 2 where you're in this cult and all these people start chasing you. To me, they all become like a chase, and it's just violence.
Right.
So I'm hoping that we can make something that's thrilling and exciting, kind of like that, but has a little bit more of a story to it. I'm gonna, from my point of view, for what I'm doing, I know Thad's doing, and Brian and the other guys on the film, but I'm gonna be trying to connect them so that they're not like, one of the things I didn't like about VHS or VHS 2 was those films could have came from anywhere. They had totally no relation, and I want to have ours to have a connecting thread that kind of joins them, so there's like a reason that they're there and they're kind of related. So I don't know what Thad would say, but I'm going to try to push the found footage restrictions too. I'm going to try to screw with that, where I kind of make it not just straight the way everyone expects, but yet fit within the restrictions, so to speak.
Kind of like Cloud Atlas, where everything is interconnected and there are different stories, but of course not as bad as Cloud Atlas. Well, that was really a bad movie, but.
Well, I haven't seen it yet, but I do like Tom Twyker a lot, the director from Germany that worked on that with the two. They're not brothers anymore. One's a girl now.
Yeah.
The
Wachowski siblings.
Yeah, the siblings. But I wanted to connect. Obviously, they're all being written by different people. Thad's writing his own. The one I'm directing is being written by Tim. I'm writing the wraparound that starts it, ends it, and kind of joins in between. So, and there's a couple other guys involved too. But I don't know. I know Thad, when he came to me to ask me if I wanted to be involved, he said he wanted to be scary. He said he wanted to not look like a movie, but it has to be found footage. We kind of mess with that any way we want, but still stay within that kind of restriction. And he wanted to be kind of realistic, and he said that hopefully, because we're a smaller movie, that we should have exploitable elements, whether it be gore or nudity. So our film's probably going to have those type of things. But
You got to have the goodies.
Gotta have
gotta
nudity, yeah.
But
A couple of boob shots here and there will help sell the movie.
the main thing I'm hoping is that we have a little bit more than just the amusement park ride feel to the film.
Right. Here's a quick question before we take off for the evening. What's your favorite found footage movie that's come out in the last 20 years?
Wow.
Oh.
Each one of you has a minute here to give me an answer, and then I'll give you my answer.
Ooh.
Oh boy, that I think I would have to say this is going to be very unpopular because no one else is going to agree with me, but probably the second Paranormal Activity.
Wow, really?
I remember it being really fantastic. I saw it in the theater with my nephew and his girlfriend, and we thought it was really scary. And I took my son and everyone to see it, and we thought it was great. And yeah, I think. Oh, wait, no, but you know what though? I there's a film that just came out. If you haven't seen it, you really should see it. I would definitely put this up there. Frankenstein's Army. The guy that directed it, I can't remember his name right off the top of my head. You can certainly Google it. This guy is a genius. If Hollywood could give him $230 million, you would really see something.
Is that a found footage movie, Thad?
Yes, and it is. It takes place during World War II, and it's this guy basically building these, they call them zombots for the Nazis, and it's very disturbing in places. And the production design came all from the director's head, and it's fantastic. It's just fantastic.
Well, to answer your question, Jackal, I would say this is going to sound like a strange answer. There's moments in the first, second, third Paranormal that I really liked a lot. I think there's the third where the girl gets lifted up by her hair when she goes upstairs, the sister that's not believing. That was a great moment. I like in this third one where the girl's sitting in the dining room and the camera slowly pans on that, I think it was on a fan, and it pans to the living room and you see like a ghost, almost a ghost-like figure sheet in the corner, really small. You might not even notice it. All of a sudden, when it goes back to her, it's not there. And when it goes back, it's not there in the living room. It goes back, it's right behind the girl. That was great. There's some moments in the second and first. I think that overall, even though I thought it was kind of silly, and I thought that the monster was way too big, there were a lot of moments in Cloverfield that I really liked. And I actually think that one of the first found footage movies, may not be in the first like Dad said, but one of the first that really had power was when the camera falls on the ground in Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, where it kills that family.
Yeah.
I thought that John McNaughton, when he did that was really powerful.
Talk about being ahead of the curve.
Yeah, that was. I think that was made originally in '86, but it took 3 or 4 years to get released because it was so violent.
I think it was shot in '85, actually.
Yeah, it was somewhere in the mid '80s.
That's how much of a geek I am. I know. So what's yours, Jackal?
Actually, you just mentioned it, Terry, and my favorite found footage movie probably is Cloverfield.
Really?
I like it.
Ironically enough, it's a great. I think it's a great movie. Saw it in theaters.
I'm gonna have to check. I'm gonna put that in tonight.
Oh, watch it, dude! It's a great movie. Look, it's one of those movies where I went into it not knowing literally nothing about the movie. Only reason I went in to see this movie is because I was a fan of one of the actors in it. I saw the trailer and I was like, it looks interesting. He's really funny on another show that he used to be on. His name is T.J. Miller. He's been in a couple of different films. He did Our Idiot Brother. He was on the show Carpoolers. Really funny dude. And I saw the trailer and I was like, whoa, he's from Carpoolers. That guy's funny. And I had nothing to do that weekend, so me and a bunch of friends went out and we saw it. Not knowing anything about the movie. I didn't even know it was a found footage movie. I saw one trailer. That's it. Ended up loving the movie.
Yeah.
Love the movie.
Well, speaking of found footage movies, you can also check out Devil's Five on Facebook.
Nice.
Still listening. Forgot to mention that.
Please give everybody all the website addresses, everything that you guys want to promote. Take a couple minutes here and just give out to everybody so they can go ahead and check you guys out.
Yeah, just timbranham.com and Devil's Five on Facebook.
Yeah, and Devil's Five, it's spelled out. That's apostrophe S, 5 F-I-V-E instead of the number 5.
Oh yeah. Thanks, Terry.
Yeah, and if you hit like on that, you'll get all our updates. I try to update it once a week with something going on with the film, whether it be a video from one of the filmmakers involved, whether it be Thad's music video shoot catalog. We did that earlier this year.
And there'll be a link to the music video, the Nosferatu music video. That's Tim Branham's music video as well.
That picture is wicked, man. I love that picture of Nosferatu.
Oh yeah. I was really, really happy with the makeup. I mean, but that's what you call a sweat equity music video. We had very small budget, and so it was me and a 14-year-old kid basically putting all that, the costuming and everything together, and it took weeks.
Wow.
And of course, you can always keep up with my work as a filmmaker or journalist on mantaraypictures.com.
And Terry's got some excellent reviews. Terry knows his stuff.
Yeah, no kidding. Nosferatu, that's an interesting character in itself right there. The Nosferatu character.
Oh, yeah.
Love that picture. Did you guys ever catch that movie with Willem Dafoe about Nosferatu?
Yeah. Shadow of the Vampire, yeah.
Shadow of the Vampire, yeah. That was a great movie.
Yes.
And by the way, I just want to give a shout-out to my good friend Jim Fox, who played Nosferatu. He's not an actor, but when I told him I was directing a music video with Nosferatu in it, he started acting just like Max Schreck. I said, "Oh my gosh, I got to cast him." So that's how I cast him, and he tore it up. He is so good in this music video. So it's really cool that the last thing I get to shoot on film, maybe, actually, out of all the music videos I've ever done, this is the best. And every time you make a project, you always think it's going to be good, or you always hope it's going to be good. Most of the time, it's not. I don't want to take the wind out of anyone's sails, but you do your best. But sometimes, for whatever reasons, it's maybe it's good, maybe it's got moments of greatness. It's really rare when you really get that fire in the bottle and. But that's
in
where
a bottle, man. Yeah.
But that's where having a really strong story and a really good script, that would be like the tantamount thing. That's as long as you have that, you have the foundation. If you don't have that, who knows?
Yeah, so Devil's 5. Everybody check that out.
Devil's 5, and I think our goal for Devil's 5 is hopefully by this time next year around Halloween, we'll have the film distributed and out for everyone to see. So that's our goal.
Yeah, I promise it's going to be a fun ride. If nothing else, it'll be a fun ride. But hopefully, you'll get the little nuances in the story, and people will enjoy that.
Yeah,
can't wait for the video with Nosferatu. And that looks epic, man. It really does. And for Devil's 5, I can't wait to see the film once it comes out. Guys, got to have you back on. We will definitely do another show in the near future and promote more stuff. Terry, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thaddeus, thank you so much for calling in and being a part of the show.
Thank you. It was awesome. Had a great time.
Pleasure having you guys on. And, guys, we will be back next week. Take care, everybody. Have a great night. Guys, thank you so much again for being part of the show.